This case took place on the streets of Oakland, California on August 21st, 2022. In just 5 brief seconds, 3 gunshots shattered the peace of a quiet neighborhood. A 60-year-old woman, who had simply planned to cross the street to get a massage, now lay helpless in a pool of blood. Her boyfriend narrowly escaped death by quickly diving into the car for cover. He then rushed out, holding her, one hand cradling her head, the other trying to stop the bleeding. She had been shot twice. Despite being rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment, she passed away that evening. The victim was a well-known dentist originally from Shanghai. Her name was Tu Lei. The news of her being gunned down in the middle of the street shook the local Chinese community. At first, many believed this was simply a case of unfortunate violence caused by worsening public safety. But as the investigation progressed, a more chilling truth began to emerge. This wasn't random. It was a calculated act of malice. So what really happened? And you are watching the Mystery Cases channel, where we together explore the most mysterious cases, the most thrilling stories. And as usual, before we unravel the mysteries in today's case, please leave a like and a subscribe to support us. Now, let's rewind time and return to Oakland, California in 2022 to retrace the steps of a dark and twisted plot. Tu Lei was born on August 4th, 1962, in Shanghai. She was an outstanding dentist who graduated from the Department of Stomatology at Shanghai's Second Medical University. For 9 years, she worked at the 9th People's Hospital, affiliated with Shanghai Jiaotong University, one of the top dental institutions in China. During this time, she married and had a child. Life seemed nearly perfect. In 1995, her husband got the opportunity to study abroad in the United States. Without hesitation, Tu Lei supported his dream. The entire family left Shanghai and moved to the U.S. To legally practice dentistry in America. Tu Lei had to start over from scratch. First came the language barrier. Each day she would wait until her child was asleep before staying up late to study English. Then came the professional requalification process. She completed dental-related coursework at the University of the Pacific and the University of California, Los Angeles. In 1997, she earned her Doctor of Dental Surgery degree from the University of California. Shortly after, she and her husband, who had also graduated, relocated to the Little Saigon neighborhood in Oakland. Little Saigon refers to communities of Vietnamese immigrants outside of Vietnam, and the one in Oakland was no exception. It was one of the largest Vietnamese enclaves in the area, known for its bustling commerce and high population of Asians, including a significant Chinese community. Upon moving there, Tu Lei quickly realized something. Overseas, fellow countrymen shared a unique sense of closeness. They were warm, easy to talk to, and deeply supportive of one another. Her outgoing nature helped her form strong bonds with her neighbors almost instantly. This inspired her entrepreneurial spirit. Rather than working in a hospital, she decided to open her own dental clinic right in the neighborhood. However, her husband disagreed. He believed that a stable government job was far more reliable. Still, Tu Lei remained determined. She poured her heart into building her small practice. Thanks to her exceptional skills, warm attitude, and affordable prices, her clinic grew steadily. But as her career soared, her marriage began to fall apart. The couple frequently argued. Eventually, her husband decided to return to China to pursue his own ambitions. They separated. Tu Lei stayed in the U.S. with her son and continued managing the clinic on her own. Not only was she devoted to her business, but she also had a kind heart. She often volunteered her services, offering free treatment to pastors and elderly residents in need. Her generous acts earned her the admiration of the local community. Over time, her clinic became a beloved fixture of the neighborhood. Some families had 3 generations, grandparents and children, all coming to her for care. Her business flourished. She lived in a beautiful home worth $1.4 million and even opened a second branch in Castro Valley, a nearby suburb. A reporter from Global Times later contacted one of Tu Lei's longtime friends, who also happened to be an assistant dean at a U.S. medical university. She said, "We often had dinner together, went shopping, and talked about business and investment. Her dental practice was doing great. She earned over $800,000 a year." With a solid career foundation, Tulele also welcomed a second spring of love into her life. A man who had previously run a finance company entered her world. After becoming wealthy, Tulele wanted to manage her finances more effectively but lacked experience. She sought advice from many people. Eventually, a loyal client introduced his son to her, a financial advisor named Nelson Peter Chia. Nelson was 13 years older than Tulele. He was ethnically Chinese, well-spoken, musically talented, and loved tennis. He drove luxury cars and ran an investment firm. His personal situation also mirrored hers. Divorced, with 3 children. The two connected instantly. Though they never married, they lived together and stayed deeply bonded for over 10 years. Perhaps under Nelson's influence, Tulele began to explore the arts. She learned to play the piano and even took up ballet. On August 4th, 2022, she celebrated her 60th birthday. Nelson and close friends hosted an intimate party for her. There was no extravagant feast or crowd of guests, just a small group of dear companions gathered to celebrate with laughter and warmth. During the party, Tulele personally performed a graceful ballet dance. Her movements were so elegant, no one could believe she was already in her 60s, but no one could have imagined that just 2 weeks later, 3 bullets would end her life. When the news of her death spread, Tulele's longtime clients couldn't hold back their tears. Some cried openly in interviews. Her boyfriend Nelson, in particular, was so overcome with grief that during his interview, he could barely speak a complete sentence without choking up. He cried until he lost his voice, and friends had to gently pat his back to comfort him. "I heard 2 to 3 gunshots pop. It all happened too fast, too suddenly," Nelson recalled. Reporters interviewed people close to Tulele at the time, and none of them believed this was a botched robbery as the police initially claimed. Instead, they suspected it was a hate crime targeting Asians. Why? There were 3 main reasons. First, according to the organization Stop AAPI Hate, between March 19, 2020 and March 13, 2022, there were over 11,500 reported hate incidents against Asian Americans across the U.S., and the number was still rising. Second, at the crime scene, Tulele's handbag was left untouched. If it was a robbery, why wasn't anything taken? Third, just a month earlier, a similar incident occurred nearby. A victim was shot, but their phone and wallet were also not stolen. On August 24th, the Chinese Consulate General in San Francisco released an official statement condemning the violence and reminding Chinese citizens in the area to stay alert and increase their safety awareness. The Little Saigon area in Oakland, unfortunately, had long been a hotspot for crime. The day after Tulele was murdered, public outrage erupted. Residents gathered spontaneously in front of Oakland City Hall. One by one, they took the mic and expressed their anger and disappointment. "I'm tired of hearing about another Chinese American getting attacked. I asked the community and the police chief, when will this end?" According to reports, between May 2021 and July 2022, in Oakland's Asian-majority neighborhoods, robberies increased by 10%. Shootings rose by 33%. Violent assaults spiked by 50%. The community was shaken to its core, and sadly, Tulele's murder wasn't the only case. Just 2 months before Tulele's death, another chilling murder took place under similar circumstances. At around 11 a.m. on July 17th, Fung Kan-hwa, a 52-year-old immigrant from Hong Kong, was sitting in his car waiting for a delivery order assignment. Suddenly, 2 men opened his driver's side door and ordered him to get out. When Fung refused, a gunshot rang out. The entire attack lasted no more than 5 seconds. Fung died at the scene. He had been living in the U.S. for 8 years, working 2 jobs, one in shipping and the other as a rideshare driver. He worked 17 to 18 hours a day, without breaks. His goals were simple: earn enough to take care of his elderly parents and marry his longtime girlfriend. 2 days later, Judy, his girlfriend of 5 years, gave a heartbreaking interview. She said she had always considered Feng part of her family. He was kind, gentle, and treated her son like his own. That day, he had dropped her off at the market, then planned to make a few deliveries before picking her up again. Her son was home when the gunshots rang out. He ignored the noise at first, until police sirens filled the street. Looking out the window, he saw officers surrounding Feng's vehicle. He immediately called Judy. When she arrived, Feng lay on the ground, covered in a white sheet. She wasn't allowed near his body. In tears, she demanded answers. "Why did this happen? On a Sunday morning? California must strengthen its laws and tighten gun control. Criminals shouldn't be able to get weapons so easily. We need better protection for everyone." A prosecutor later stated that the murder shocked the entire community, not only because it happened in broad daylight, but because the method was disturbingly similar to Tu Lolo's case. The Chinese community in Little Saigon had long suffered from robberies, assaults, and even arson. One jewelry store had been broken into 10 times in 1 year. The owner had no choice but to sleep inside the store for protection. Other shop owners began boarding up their stores and closing hours early, some as early as 4 p.m., to avoid danger. In June, over 20 local businesses joined forces to speak out and raise money for a surveillance system. But sadly, their efforts weren't enough. A month later, Feng was murdered. And on August 1st, just days before Tu Lolo's case, 7 local businesses were burglarized in a single night, including a laundromat, a nail salon, a flower shop, and a dessert store. One restaurant owner described how the burglars cut a hole through the roof to get in. Another laundromat owner said, furious, "This happens every week now. We're exhausted. It's become normal." One shocking surveillance video showed thieves calmly leaving the scene, even tipping a homeless person along the way, as if to mock the justice system. Even more infuriating was the police response. When burglars broke into a shop at 4:30 a.m., the alarm blared, and someone called 911 immediately. But the Oakland Police Department said they received the call at 6:01 a.m. and didn't arrive until 7:24 a.m. Locals were devastated. They had lost faith in the police. A nail salon owner publicly pleaded with the mayor, "Please do something. We're struggling here. We can't keep living in fear." And then, 20 days later, Tu Lolo was murdered. That day, Tu Lolo and Nelson had planned to get a massage. As usual, Nelson parked the car across the street from the spa. After parking, Tu Lolo reminded him to grab some bags and clothes from the back seat. Then she stepped out. The next few moments were a blur of terror, screams, gunshots, car doors slamming, an engine roaring. Nelson said he couldn't even recall what he did, just that he had to get away from the chaos. When he came to his senses, he found Tu Lolo lying on the ground, unconscious and bleeding heavily. The sound of gunfire drew neighbors to the scene. They rushed out with towels and called 911. When police arrived, they found 3 bullet casings. Surveillance footage was limited, but one key camera captured something vital: a white, older model car. A man jumped out of it and ran directly toward Tu Lolo, who had just exited the vehicle. Her voice could be heard yelling in protest, moments before gunshots rang out. That car had been circling the area for over 30 minutes before the attack, as if scouting for someone. At 3:30 p.m. on August 22nd, Oakland Police Chief Armstrong held a press conference urging the public to share any footage and tips. He promised to increase patrols in the Little Saigon area 24/7. That night, hundreds gathered at the scene of the murder for a candlelight vigil. Family, friends, city officials, and community members came together to honor Tu Lolo's life. On August 24th, Shanghai Jiaotong University School of Medicine, where Tu had once worked, published an obituary mourning her tragic death. On September 1st, a funeral and memorial service was held. The church was packed. Her boyfriend Nelson and her 32-year-old son both gave emotional speeches. At one point, Nelson sang "You'll Never Walk Alone." He choked up mid-performance. But behind the grief, something wasn't right. The twist begins here. Tulalay's old friend, known in the community as Master Deep, ran a surveillance equipment business. Due to the rising crime rate, his company had been thriving. After getting permission from nearby store owners, he remotely accessed their surveillance feeds. What he saw disturbed him. Master Deep believed this was not a hate crime. It was a trap. He pointed out 3 major red flags. 1. The suspect's white car had been parked just half a block away for 13 minutes before the shooting, something police missed earlier. 2 patrol cars even passed by during that time. If this was random, why would the suspect risk lingering there? 2. The shooter ran past Nelson, who was closer to the car, to directly target Tulale. He didn't say a word, no warning, just pushed her down and fired 3 shots. Nelson wasn't hit at all. If it was a robbery, why not take her purse or shoot both? 3. Master Deep also discovered that Tulale's spa appointment was scheduled by Nelson himself the day before. It all seemed too convenient. Master Deep handed the footage over to police. In it, they clearly saw the license plate of the suspect's car. This turned the investigation upside down. Police began quietly investigating Nelson. They found that he didn't accompany Tu to the hospital after the shooting. Instead, he stayed behind to give a statement. They also noted how he cried without shedding tears during his interview. It felt forced. Even more suspicious, Nelson skipped a memorial event he was scheduled to attend, sending a in his place. And despite his wealth, he didn't offer a single dollar in reward money for information. The police chief stated, "This is no ordinary robbery. We are now investigating much deeper." Thanks to the clear license plate captured on surveillance, police quickly traced the white car. It was originally owned by a used car dealership in Stockton, a city about 100 kilometers from Oakland. Just before the murder, the car had been purchased by a man named Hashim Basim. Hashim was already in the criminal database. He was 33 years old, a former professional tennis player who had competed in tournaments back in 2007. Though his sports profile was still online, he also had a criminal record. 10 years earlier, Hashim had a confrontation with police during a protest in Albany, California. The protest was about the University of California selling agricultural land for commercial use. Police compared the fingerprints from the bullet casings and Tulale's car with those in the database. It was a match. With a search warrant, they raided Hashim's home. Inside, they found several firearms. Ballistics analysis confirmed that one of the guns matched the bullets found at the scene. Hashim Basim was arrested on October 27, 2022, 2 months after Tulale's murder. But he wasn't the only one. At the same time, Nelson Peter Chia was also arrested. Why? Police had found text messages and plans on Hashim's phone that directly linked him to Nelson. The messages included the exact date, time, and location of the murder. Turns out Hashim wasn't just some random hitman. He had known Nelson for years. According to a mutual friend named Cooney, Nelson had once hired Hashim as a tennis coach. They met 12 years ago at a local tennis club and occasionally played together. Hashim was even employed there while Nelson was a wealthy member with multiple luxury cars. But why would Hashim do it? The answer lay in the messages: money. Hashim was promised a large payout. He was even instructed to mislead police if questioned, posing as a witness who could provide a fake description of the shooter. What was Nelson's motive? Money. Plain and simple. Tulale's assets totaled $12 to $14 million, including life insurance policies, real estate, investment accounts, a trust fund. Although her son was the legal beneficiary, remember, Nelson was her financial advisor. In the weeks leading up to the murder, he had tried to secretly transfer assets into his and his son's name. Fortunately, her insurance broker refused, calling the move illegal. But that didn't stop Nelson. After the murder, he acted like a grieving victim, manipulating public emotions and even turning the focus onto racial tensions, painting the crime as a hate attack on Asians. In reality, he was the puppet master. On October 28th, just one day after being arrested, both Nelson and Hashim were held separately at Santa Rita Jail awaiting trial. That afternoon, at 2:08 p.m., guards came by for a routine check and noticed something strange about Nelson's position. When they opened his cell door, they found him slumped with a T-shirt tied to the door handle, wrapped around his neck. Medical personnel rushed to resuscitate him, but it was too late. At 2:30 p.m., Nelson Peter Chia was pronounced dead. There were no signs of assault or foul play. Investigators concluded that he had taken his own life. Later that day, the Oakland police held a press conference. This was never about race or hate crimes, the police chief said. It was about greed. Some tried to exploit this case to divide our community. But now we must stand together. For the victim, for her family, and for justice. The revelation left the community in shock. But not everyone was surprised. Two people in particular said they saw this coming. One was a retired university professor who once knew Nelson. He simply said, "This is not what I wanted, but I'm not surprised." The other was Byron, Nelson's own son. Byron didn't even carry his father's last name. He only found out about Nelson's death when a high school classmate texted him. And his reaction? "I don't feel anything. Not sad. Not even surprised." Byron opened up about his traumatic childhood. He said Nelson had always been abusive. When Byron was in 6th grade, he wasn't allowed to call his girlfriend. Nelson smashed his phone, breaking Byron's nose. He had to repeat the grade because of it. He said Nelson was a serial cheater, constantly bringing blonde women around and never hiding it, even from his own kids. Worse, Byron claimed that Nelson had a disturbing fascination with violence. He would get excited watching scenes of people or animals being tortured, whether in movies or real life. Just 5 days before his arrest, Nelson held a memorial concert for Tulele. He even sold tickets, from $50 to $200, with her smiling photo printed on the flyers. A friend who attended said Nelson performed Once Upon a Time in a sleek black suit. He looked emotional, but his voice sounded fake. It didn't feel real, they said. That same friend revealed a heartbreaking truth. Tulele had planned to break up with Nelson that day. It may have been the final trigger. Instead of facing the humiliation of being left and the consequences of the law, Nelson chose a different exit: death. As for Hashim Basim, he was charged with 5 felony counts, including murder. He pleaded not guilty and is currently awaiting trial. And that is the end of the case.